Hello, and welcome to Live with WERD Coach Creative. My name is Shelley-Ann Edwards-Barran, and I am your neighborhood friendly creative writing specialist here to help you complete your manuscript and get published. Now, today is a special day because yesterday was SCA results in Trinidad and Tobago. And many parents and teachers and students received results yesterday. So there's a whole lot of emotions and stuff happening around the country right now. So I wanted to touch a little bit on that and tie in some of the things that we have been discussing because I think these young writers really do need to be celebrated. And for those of you who don't know what SEA is and what it's about and what students have to write, I'd give you a little insight into that as well. So you can understand why these accomplishments are incredible and why they really ought to be celebrated. But before we get into that, a little bit about me for those of you who are joining for the first time. I call myself a creative writing specialist because I work with writers to help them clarify ideas and put the words they want to put on paper. Now, sometimes, we want to write things, but we're not sure how to say it, and we're not too clear on how our audience is going to receive it. We mightn't even know who our audience is. And that is where I come in, and I work with writers to help them clarify their ideas, make sense of what they want to say, and ensure they use the right words to meet the audience they're trying to meet. And through all of that, we also go through, basics of the self-publishing process so that at the end of it, the writer can navigate the process to become a published author. So I work with actually young writers, which is why I am so in tune with the SEA creative writing. I do work with SEA students as well, and I work with university students who are, aiming for masters and undergraduate degrees because PhDs are very involved. I tend not to work too much with the PhDs unless it's someone that I know or I've worked with them before. Those are the only PhD levels that I work with because I think that my real passion is helping writers who are, up and coming and the creative side of it, which is why I call myself a creative writing specialist and not just a writing specialist or even an academic writing specialist. I have taught academic writing, but I am favoring the creative writing realm at this point. And these lives that I do every Tuesday, now we aim for 9:30 a.m., but thank you for recordings that people can go back to the recordings because we're really working with some Trini time here with the creative writing, but we're getting into the groove and we are developing the positive habits where writing and presenting writing are concerned. And that's the whole point of these lives. I've recognized that in myself, while I help authors all the time, getting my own stuff done is a little bit more challenging. And what I really need to help me get that done is the more positive effective habits where writing is concerned. So these lives, along with what I call co-writing sessions that I do on a Monday evening, 6 to 8, and a Thursday morning, 9 to 11, helping me complete my own manuscripts and get ready for publication. So I'm still in the editing phase of the one that I completed recently, but as soon as it's in print, I'll let you guys know, which should be soon. And when I say soon, I'm thinking like about, 6 weeks to 2 months maximum. That's around the time that I believe I'd be able to get it out considering where I am with the editing process. Because, of course, writing is the first part of publishing, but it's not the only part. There's the editing process, there's there's a lot of noise outside for some reason. I hope you guys aren't hearing that. Yeah, there's the editing process, then there's the publishing process, there's the marketing, and so it's not just the writing. However, of course, if you don't have a manuscript completed, then none of the other things would make sense or work quite well. So that's where we're starting. We're talking about, completing the manuscript and keeping certain things in mind. So that's, I think, enough about me for now. And of course, if you have any questions about anything that we talk about during these lives, please feel free, message me, let me know. Because what I'm really hoping for is that being transparent and open about my own writing process would help others who are, struggling with their writing, struggling with communicating. Which reminds me, this is supposed to be part of my accountability. So I have some confessions to make where writing is concerned. You look around, try not to make eye contact. So um I've been doing more research than writing recently. And I have been working on my editing. So I'm finished with the self-editing process. I think I have one more look at it because I advocate, like 3 passes at it um through the self-editing before you send it off to anybody else. And so, the self-editing worksheet you go through and whatnot. And if you want a copy of the worksheet, just, hold a little bit, just refining it, and it'll be available soon for purchase. Yeah, this is not one of the free things because it's real. I'm trying to give it as much input as possible. So, but it's not going to be costly. It might be like about, like $12 or something, TT, to get a copy of it. So what I have now is a general, self-editing worksheet. I am going to be doing one for fiction, one for nonfiction, and then, various types of fiction as we continue. So there'd be a few. Because of course, while, writing in general, you have your agenda, we all know that the creative writing in terms of narratives and stories, that's a different consideration from the nonfiction, which would be, like the self-help books and other categories of writing for nonfiction. So self-editing, you would need to look for slightly different things. So we have the general one now to work with, which is going to guide you through that process. But then you can go even more detailed depending on the genre you're working with and the subgenre, in the narrative writing, storytelling, novel writing, children's books. We have all of these different categories that, have slightly different requirements. And having that self editing and then the beta reader worksheet would really be useful for self publishing purposes. So let's, step back a little bit and talk about the SEA creative writing and what that is about and why we should really, really celebrate students. Um, I guess the SEA creative writing is pretty much writing under pressure because it's an exam, and students are expected to produce either a narrative or a report, and they're given 50 minutes, 50 minutes to um, receive a prompt. Well, they get 3 prompts to choose from. They select one and they respond to that. So these prompts are guides of, what they're supposed to be working on. We have there are like a couple of sentences and then some bullet points to guide the writing. But these prompts are given to the students on the day. The first time they see these prompts are in the exam, and these prompts are meant to generate the thought to help them complete the responses for the exam. And what students are writing for the narrative, which is what they did this year, 2023, was a narrative. This year, students are working with, well, when they work with the narrative, they're working with micro stories because, as you can imagine, we're looking at plot with rising action and all these things, character development, setting development, theme and concepts and lessons learned and all these things in 50 minutes. So most students get up to like maybe page and a half on average, sometimes 2 pages, and the real prolific writers might be writing a little bit more. but they're expected to produce these, you know, pieces of writing in this time. So of course, yes, they're learning and they're developing, and the entire primary school writing, creative writing training is culminated at this point. So, students are expected to produce certain levels, and of course, they're graded. And we have a range from, well, 0 to 20, 20 being exceptional, full marks. And, students are in that range. Now, me personally, what these students are expected to create is it's an art, and it works with strategies and principles as well. So it's both an art and a science. And when I work with students, I have students who begin at 8 and they get to 10, sometimes 12. I have students who average around, they start at like 10, 12, and they, get to 16. And so my real focus is getting the students to understand their voice, get the basic knowledge in terms of character description, etc., and be able to duplicate, replicate, um, create from scratch during the exam. And I say from scratch, with the understanding that many times, we practice different stories and so on at, various intervals. And therefore, they're really drawing from ideas, but they're creating something new in that moment. And what I did a couple of years ago when I started really getting into this SEA training and so on, I sat down and I timed myself and challenged myself to create stories within the time that students have to write and using the requirements that students have to write. And I tell you, it is not easy. Even as a writer and writing instructor, getting a fresh prompt, um, seeing it for the first time, having to gather your ideas, develop, a structured response within 50 minutes, inclusive of revising and editing and making spelling changes and all those things. It is not an easy thing. And so, what these students have to do is absolutely, um, you know, it's a challenge. And what they accomplish in that time, I mean, you should read some of these stories that these students write when we do drills and so on. It is absolutely amazing that they can come up with all these ideas. And this is what had me thinking why I decided to, go this route with our conversation this morning, is because when when students write, the ones that score high tend to focus on the combination of things and how the audience is receiving it. It's not just a matter of meeting the technical points, especially with a narrative. It is not just a matter of meeting the technical points of creating a narrative story structure. So the plot is important more than anything else, because what plot is not just meeting technical requirements. It's about a combination of skills and concepts and ideas that work together to create a story that is both appealing and demonstrates literary techniques. So that is essentially what the students are aiming for, to demonstrate their writing ability, their understanding, both their creative and critical thinking. And even at that age, even at the young age where students are at the primary school level and they are working with this creative writing story, they're writing this narrative. If they don't have their audience in mind, then they're going to be challenged to have effective stories and really get into the storytelling. If they don't know the techniques of, things like flashback and cliffhanger endings that really enhance a story if they don't know how to engage with setting and character description, where they can use imagery and all the other devices to really make their writing interesting and come alive, then they're not going to score well. And so it's really a combination of things. And I thought it would have been useful to mention that in the context of what we're discussing in our, Word Coach Creative Lives, because this is what I really want everyone to understand. Writing principles apply at every stage, and how you use those principles and the techniques you create to make those principles work for you as a writer, that applies at every stage. So it's not as if I teach the younger students certain techniques that the older ones don't need to know, or the older ones would learn techniques that the younger ones would not need to know. Ideally, you work within the time that you have. So you have to really select and pick and choose which ones would give the most benefit for the purpose that you're writing. But that strategy of looking at the purpose of the writing, considering the audience who is going to read it, and implementing strategies and techniques as required and as would be useful for the purpose, that does not change. Because when we write, we're not writing for ourselves, we're writing for others to read. And that understanding of audience and what the audience is looking for is going to be absolutely critical in every aspect. Now, sometimes as the expert, the audience may not know what it is they need, especially for instructional and the nonfiction style books. However, they know that they need something and they know what result they're looking for. And if what you are sharing is helping them get that result, then you are still tapping into what your audience needs. So, one of the things that really helps me um, guide writers, especially those going the self-publishing route, those who are trying to attract, traditional publishers as well. Are you giving your audience what they're looking for? Now, in most times, audience looks for a feeling or a strategy or a technique. They want to be able to do something at the end of what it is, at the end of reading. They want to feel a certain way. They want to accomplish certain things. So, are you communicating that effectively with your audience? Even as a writer and writing instructor, when I look at my own writing, that's the question I ask myself. And because I'm also an editor, I'm especially critical about that aspect of my writing, which is one of my challenges. And we spoke about that, I think, if not last week, week before, when we spoke about, writing doesn't have to be perfect. Um, it doesn't have to be um, you know, any special way other than something that meets your audience's needs. And so you have to understand your audience. You have to understand your audience's needs. And which means that you need to recognize that you're not writing for yourself. You also need to recognize that you are working on this manuscript with a purpose in mind. So while it might seem you've said all that you want to say, have you said it in a way that meets your audience where they are and takes them to where they want to be? So that's my point today, and I'm going to wrap up early because I'm also preparing for that SEA live that I told you I do. I do that one at 11, and so I want to get to that. But the thing is, I really wanted to sort of step in and explain that the number one consideration for a writer is what is my purpose for creating this manuscript or publishing this book? Is my writing going to fulfill that purpose? That is your number one question, which is why you need the extra eyes of an editor, which is why it is often quite helpful to work with beta readers to get their feedback. But of course, everyone works within parameters. So you're not going to just ask, what do you think about this? And they say, yeah, it's good. That's not the kind of feedback you want. You need to ask specific questions, which is why I've created that beta reader worksheet and the self editing worksheet, because you're not just reading it to see how it makes you feel. You're reading it to see if the information is going to help your audience feel in particular ways. And in order to do that, again, we come back to that point, you need to understand who your audience is and what they are looking for, what they need. Now, that is like the basic fundamental of storytelling, content creation, um, all communication, really. What does my audience need? Am I fulfilling that need? So these are things that I'd like you to think about. And if you're not sure, okay, who is my audience? You're writing to all people because this is going to help all people. Well, think of it this way. Ask yourself three subsequent questions. One, who is likely to pay attention to what you're writing? Who is likely to act on what you're suggesting, and who will benefit the most from what you are sharing. So, so these, especially when you're working with nonfiction, those are the kinds of questions that you want to ask yourself. And for fiction, we know, of course, there's so many different subgenre, from horror to romance, etc., etc. People have different preferences. Some people like horror, they would never read a romance. And are you interested in converting a horror reader into a romance reader, or are you interested in selling a book? If you're interested in selling books, then you target the romance reader who loves romance because they are the ones who would be more likely to read your writing. And it's not a matter of, okay, if they buy my book, they're not going to buy another one. People who love certain genre and people who love reading, they buy lots and lots of books. So it's not about, okay, if this person writes well, then mine isn't going to. We're really aiming for, what does the reader want? What does the reader look for? So romance readers tend to love the happy ending. They want to, the guy gets the girl kind of idea. They love those kinds of, hard to get, sort of caves in the end, had to work a little bit, need some changes. And, so you can study the genre that you're aiming for, and recognizing what genre you're aiming for is another aspect of it, so that you can understand the readers of that genre, so that you could give them what they're looking for. And that is what is going to have your book useful, interesting, be picked up by others, be recommended because they got what they were looking for. So I'm going to end right about now. Just to the last couple of things I want to say, just to recap. Think about your audience, think about your genre. Are you fitting within? I mean, it's all well and good to want to be the outlier and to bring something unique to the table. Literary fiction, the nonfiction genre. It's all about expressing yourself. Yes, I get that. But then, do you also want to sell books? Do you also want to get good reviews? Do you also want to impact on your audience? Then, if that's the case, who is your audience? What is the impact do you want to have on them? What is the impact you want to have on them? Yeah, I edit all the time. And that's a good thing. You could always come back and edit, right? So think about those things as you complete your manuscript and you work toward the self-publishing. These are the really fundamental underlying concepts that I'd want you to keep in mind. These are the things that I keep in mind as well. And yes, you want to get it as close as possible, which is why you want that, second pair of eyes, couple other pair of eyes in addition to an editor and so on. It's never going to be just right the first time you write it. It's going to work for you, but will it work for your audience? These are the things that you need to ask yourself as you complete and move on. So, all right. As I close off, I want to add that the self-publishing in Trinidad and Tobago program, it's going to be uploaded soon, and I'm going to be sharing that link so that you can have access to it. We had the workshop, but we're packaging it, and it's going to keep being revised once you join in this year. The good news is that we're creating a community, how to self-publishing in Trinidad and Tobago. And once you do any of our programs this year, you will have free access to that community. You would join. It's going to be a closed community. And from January 2024, there would be a yearly subscription for those who do not engage this year. If you're engaging after January 1, 2024, then there's going to be a yearly subscription to join the group. But for now, as long as you do any of our programs, you have access to the group. And we're still putting things in place, so it's not launched just yet. But I'll tell you more about that coming soon. And what is the group going to be about? Offering continued advice. You'd have access to courses, you'd have previews, discounts on the paid ones. You'd have free workshops, check-ins, all that kind of thing, to really help you complete your manuscript, get published over and over again as many times as you choose to publish and get out there, get into the hands of readers. All right, our next workshop is going to be on the 17th. That one is about social media presence, how to write captions, a little idea on graphics, some of the things that you would need to work on as an author in terms of your brand and sharing yourself and your work so that readers would be seeing you, making yourself more visible. Information about that is on our page on the website, werdcoach.com, wordcoach.com. Look at courses and you would see the tab there. You can register, because self-publishing requires that you know some stuff. And if you want to give yourself the best opportunity to be out there, be known, and get your books sold, then please definitely join in the workshop. It's just 350, and I say just because it's a wealth of information. Myself, my colleague, and we have a guest presenter as well, because there's so much that you would need to have access to. And of course, registering for that program gives you a free pass into the um, you know, publishing in Trinidad and Tobago community, where you can get ongoing support, ask your questions, details, everything as you work toward publishing and continuing publishing. Okay, so I hope today's session was useful. Please like, comment, share. Again, like I said, we're building a community to really support writers who are working toward getting things done. And we need to get more quality publications out there from the Caribbean, from Trinidad and Tobago, and that support to keep doing it and be more visible. Okay, so take care. Have a wonderful rest of today, and I do appreciate you stopping by. I look forward to comments, questions. I'll put the link for the program in the chat and for the co-writing sessions if you're interested. And of course, you can just message me on Facebook, or via WhatsApp 717-4993. Okay, have a wonderful rest of today. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.